Welcome in, college football fans. You're back at the Fan Addict Sports Network, man. It's your boy Coach I, and as always, I got the stat guy with me, man. What's going on, stat guy?
Hey, what's going on, Coach? Hey, getting to talk this Big Ten action today with Penn State, man.
That's right, man. Hey, a lot of hype going around Penn State, rightfully so, man. So let's go ahead and
Yeah,
get into it.
the fanatic, where we keep it 100, keep it real. That's the only way we know how to be. Talking that sports talk, you know what I'm saying? Straight out of South Carolina, upstate, A64. Yeah, the FANATTIC, the fanatic, where we keep it OG. We talking sports, so I call what
All
I
right,
see.
man. Like I said, we're back in here. We're talking Penn State Nittany Lions season preview, man. And listen, we covered one game for Penn State last year, and it was the Rose Bowl, and it did pretty well. And I think it was because we had a special guest from the Penn State side of things come on and talk Penn State. So we're gonna do the same thing today, man. We're gonna bring our guy back from Sideline Sports. So on Twitter, man, Sidelines Penn State, and he's gonna come in and shed some light on the Penn State Nittany Lions upcoming season. So give us a chance to bring our guest in. What's going on today, my man?
Hey, gentlemen, how are we doing?
Hey, good, man. Good. How you feeling? How you feeling?
It's much better than I did last year this time. I'm still trying to make sure that all of my temperaments are still put in check, but it's going to be very exciting, a very, like you said, hyped up season coming up for the Nits this year in 2023.
Okay, before we jump into it, man, tell the people how they can find you.
Mainly on Twitter for Sidelines Penn State. You can follow me on there. I normally put out some articles right around this time of year for the upcoming season. Hop on great podcasts just like this. And if you want to follow some authentic Penn State reporting, you know where to go.
That's right, man. You definitely kept it real with us last time, and I'm assuming the same thing this time. So let's go ahead and jump right into this thing, man. We're going to talk the 22 season review. You guys were 11-2 with a win over Utah in the New Year's Six Bowl. I think your best win was that because even though the quarterback got hurt, Utah was a pretty good team last year. I mean, they were back-to-back Pac-12 champions. And then, of course, the only two losses were to Michigan and Ohio State, maybe Ohio State being the tougher of the two because you guys gave them a really good battle. How'd you feel about last season?
I think it was a good step in the right direction because the previous seasons, obviously with COVID related, and one before that, we just didn't reach probably the pinnacle in what they wanted. Like you said, as always, it's going to come down to Michigan and Ohio State matches. Even the Ohio State final score, 44-31, is a very misleading because that was a ball game through about 3.5 quarters. It just all went sideways at the wrong time. But yeah, to culminate with a Rose Bowl championship against a very good Utah team, and I wouldn't be surprised if Utah is back there this year, along with maybe the likes of a USC, unless they hit a playoff team. But going in with a lot of momentum, ending the year strong with the New Year's Six Bowl, and then, like you said, the hype train's been there ever since because this squad can potentially do even better this year if that's possible.
I think the same thing, and I think the stat guy is thinking that as well. Stat guy, we're going to jump into the roster management for Penn State, man. We're going to talk transfer, portal, and recruiting. What you got on this, stat guy?
Yeah, so for me, obviously, one of the big things was Penn State looking to replace 60% of their production from the wide receiver core that lost last year, whether via the portal or graduation or the draft. And so for me, Malik McCain, I know he's going to be on there too deep. He probably won't break the starting lineup right off the rip. Came from Florida State, 17 catches, 206 yards last year and 3 touchdowns, but big bodied receiver. I mean, you're talking about another big receiver that any team is going to love a 6'5" guy. And other than that, a pickup that I think may have flew under the radar that I'm very interested to see for him is Alex Felkins, the place kicker, who will be handling their field goal duties this year. Was 11 for 16 last year at Columbia, and is 36 for 54 in his career as a 3-year starter. So he's definitely been out there a bunch and has attempted many field goals. And like I've said before, man, give me a proven guy instead of a true freshman. Even though it's Ivy League, I'd rather an Ivy League kicker versus somebody that was kicking high school last year.
That's right. And I'm going to speak to that wide receiver production, man. You also got Dante Cephas from Kent State, who had 1,200 yards in 2021 and then 700 last year, averaging 15 yards a catch, man. Like, so I think James Franklin did great in the portal to replace some of that production because I think, yeah, I mean, whether, like you say, whether graduation, NFL draft, or portal, I mean, you lost 2 running backs, but I don't think that really matters. Even though Devin Ford led the team in rushing in 2020, 21, Singleton and Allen, arguably the best two in the Big Ten, if not the nation. How are you feeling about that roster going into the season, man?
It's thunder and lightning. It's fantastic. I think this is where we started finding some more NIL money to help us with the transfer market, like you said, with Cephas and Falcons. We also picked up Riley Thompson, who is a redshirt senior punter. So we have people behind them with redshirt sophomores, with Alex Machetta and Sanchez Hadak. But
Okay.
like they said, let's get some proven commodities there. They've done that in the past along with the offensive line, and now they're kind of shoring that up with wide receiver, which I would probably say outside of maybe interior defensive line is their thinnest projected lineup.
Yeah.
But if we're splitting hairs there, that's fine by me. That's perfectly fine because, like you mentioned, we have thunder and lightning in the backfield, which had caused Devin Ford and Kevon Lee to leave because they know
Exactly.
that they're not going to tote the rock this year. Those are going to be really the people to look for because I just love Katron Allen finding the 3 to 4 yards. He always makes one tackle, but he always moves the sticks forward. And then if you want a home run hit, there's very few in college football that can deliver like Nick Singleton, who can only, I'm assuming, get better this year. So I think with less of a focus on maybe the wide receivers and making sure that we have someone to protect Drew and someone to maybe take the pressure off with the loaded backfield, I think that's going to be the great next step forward in Penn State's offense.
So on that front, like in recruiting, you guys were 14th overall, second in the Big Ten. So is there somebody from that recruiting class 2023 that you're looking forward to seeing, or maybe even could make a huge impact this year?
To be honest, I think outside of maybe Tony Rojas at linebacker, there's not a ton that kind of spring to mind. I think it's because we do have depth kind of across the roster. Maybe the stat guy can find one or two that can see really a true hit of it because we did get to see, the 2 running backs last year who were freshmen really make a huge effort. And I'm assuming that we'll probably find someone throughout the year to kind of find that thing because, like I said, with the thin wide receiver defensive tackle, maybe you'll find maybe not a first year, but maybe a redshirt freshman to kind of step up when it's needed. But I think we have a little bit more of a senior roster this year. So I think it'll be very challenging for a true freshman to make as much of an impact as they did last year. But hey, I am happy to be completely wrong, and I'd love for 2 or 3 people just to come up and really show out.
But I think that speaks to the state of the program because when you want to be elite, you want to be welcoming to freshman impact players, but you don't want to count on freshman impact players. You know what I'm saying? So that's actually great talking about where Penn State is right now. Stat guy, did you have anybody in the recruiting class that may stand out to you name wise just because of hype or that you're just looking forward to seeing?
I did. I mean, they put together a top 15 class, which you'll take all day long. But, with what they did in the transfer portal, they went out and shored up their holes at wide receiver and some of the positions where you may see a true freshman come in and get some real burn, kicker, punter. They went and shored all that up in the transfer portal. Like you said, they're senior heavy this year. And I think it speaks volumes to what James Franklin's trying to do to say, look, this is the year. Let's push the chips all in and go get proven commodities and not rely on finding another Nick Singleton to be just an absolute home run as a true freshman.
Yeah, man. And speaking of Singleton, man, we're going to go ahead and talk about that offense. That offense, man, it's just like, listen, starts up front in the trenches with the big uglies, man. You guys got Fashanu at the left tackle, who is widely considered the best left tackle in college football.
Yep.
And then you got Sal Wormley, and if I butcher this name, Hunter Nazad at center. I think the center position is so undervalued in football. I think when you have a good center, that changes everything. And so I know, Michigan gets all the hype for the offensive line, the 2 Joe Moore awards back to back, but not for nothing, man. Singleton and Allen got a good front wall there. how are you feeling about that offensive line? You think they're going to challenge for the Joe Moore Award?
I mean, that'd be wonderful. It's a great step forward. I mean, how many years, year after year, have you heard that Penn State's offensive line has gotten better than it was the year before? This year, I actually believe it because of Hunter Norzad, which was a transfer. He's a redshirt senior. That's a great way to start it. You have Lennon Tengwall to the left of him, who was our top recruit a couple of years back. You have Olu, who goes, without saying he's going to be a top 5 pick. And then you'll have different people in rotation, mainly Caden Wallace, like you said, Sal Wormley. And the great highlights of our last year's freshman class was Berkmeyer and Javen Williams. So we have offensive tackles coming in afterwards, along with Drew Shelton, to kind of shore that up. So we now actually finally have depth, not just 4 stars, but also 5 stars that are also not even playing in the first. They're playing in the 2 deep. So we can actually allow ourselves to have an injury or 2, and people just have that next man up mentality that we have yet to have in a very, very long time. So you have the road graders, you have the pass protection, and you're going to give a lot of time for a first-year starting quarterback to really shine.
That's what I was thinking. Like, how are you feeling about that? Because you are replacing your signal caller, but the thing is, everybody around him is either the top at their position, or like you say, you got ultimate depth at that front wall. So I don't know much about that the new guy, and since you're around the Penn State program or whatever, how are you feeling about the new signal caller?
I got the pleasure to interview him, I think, when he first committed to us. He's replacing Cliff, who played for 14 years on our team. But now he's over at Green Bay. Good for him. I wish him nothing but the best. But Drew Aller is our most top-rated quarterback we've probably ever had, if you want to bring in stats and numbers and stars and figures. He's big. He's an Elite 11 quarterback. He can make every throw on the field. He's mobile, so he's not just like the statue back there. It's just how quickly does he pick up the full range of the playbook? Who does he look to, especially because we have transfers coming in? Does he rely a little bit more about in between the hash marks with a more in-depth tight end group? Not true stars. I mean, Theo Johnson's still there, and I think he'll be drafted next year. But I think he'll rely more upon that running game. I think Yursich is going to probably start him slow, and it's great because we start with West Virginia, which is a horrible team, so great for them, and we get to kind of slowly get up, because if you look at our schedule, we really don't even have anyone of note. Week 4 Iowa, but we know that their offensive proclivity is less than. We'll have 7 games under our belt plus a bye before we get to Ohio State. So I think we have a buffer zone where we can actually start learning the entire playbook, gelling as a team, or when we actually need to work with it, because we have Ohio State, then 3 weeks later we have Michigan.
Yeah, man, I think you're right. Having that 7-game buffer before you take on Ohio State, I think that's critical, especially when you're breaking in a new quarterback, regardless of the talent level. Stat guy, what you got on that offense, man? Any holes you worried about, or any areas of concern?
Not really area of concern. I guess it's the question mark. I mean, they returned 6 starters. You mentioned it, 4 on the offensive line. That's just a luxury in and of itself. But my player to kind of watch is going to be Drew Aller, the sophomore quarterback in limited action, 35 of 60 last year as a freshman for 344 yards and 4 TDs. Solid numbers for just mop-up duty. But you look as far as, to me, I think you just need him to be a game manager. And I don't know if that is the style of quarterback he is. He is a little bit more on the dual threat side. He can make every throw. I personally loved watching him and his highlights in the Elite 11 coming out of high school. But I wonder if he can get in the headspace to be a game manager and not lose them games and just let his running backs eat and let their defense be good. I wonder if that arm's going to get him into some trouble this year as a sophomore taking the snaps.
You got any concerns in that area, whether or not he can, like I say, I think Singleton and Allen, they paved the way for the success for Penn State. And sometimes younger quarterbacks can tend to try to force the action as opposed to just going with the flow. Any concerns there?
To be honest, we've had game managers for a long time, and I'm tired of having the bus driver. I'm the fighter pilot. So You either have a bus driver or you have a fighter pilot, and that's how you get to the playoffs with a fighter pilot, and that's with Drew. I am happy if he bombs it down deep and gets picked off. That's way better than whatever the heck we were doing for the past couple of years. Will he get into trouble? Absolutely, but he will probably be in a position where he wins us games as opposed to loses us games, which is a much new way of thinking here. So I wholeheartedly endorse him trying to make that extra throw that maybe 5 other people in college football can do.
Yeah, and like you said, sometimes quarterbacks, with that blank security blanket in the backfield could play not to lose as opposed to playing to win. And it sounds like Drew may be the kind of guy that's going to play to win. So that may help you, especially in those games against Michigans and Ohio State. So, but on the other side, it's not like they don't have a great defense to get them out of trouble just in case the offensive series doesn't go good. Talk to that defense and what you're excited to see on that defensive side of the ball.
They don't really have any holes. They're a top 3 defense, top 5 defense, however you want to cut it. Our strength, linebackers, Curtis Jacobs, Abdul Carter. Those are just fierce gentlemen. Our backfield, our defensive backfield is probably our strength with our no-fly zone led by Kalen King and Keaton Ellis, and I'm hoping that Zakee Wheatley takes the next step up because we are replacing some people there, but we have such depth, plus Johnny Dixon, who is more of that veteran presence. He came from a transfer from South Carolina, which I love, and Day Hardy, he'll also kind of help out as kind of that star nickel, however you want to call it, fifth defensive back on the field. And we're going to get after the quarterback. I mean, we have Chop Robinson, who might be the best defensive end out there. We have Adisa Isaac, who's finally healthy, knock on the closest piece of wood. And like I said, the only thing in the middle that I worry about is the depth after Beeman and Devon Ellies, who played a lot of football for us, but I wouldn't say flashing stars. I would say they're just very solid individuals. They can be relied upon. And very much like a redshirt junior, Tyler Elsdon and Kobe King up the middle, they are not going to be the sideline peoples. That is what Abdul Carter and that's what Curtis Jacobs are. They're just going to be the spine up the middle that can make sure that no one gets past 6 yards. I've tried to look into holes in this defense. I don't think I find any.
That's heavy. That's heavy. What about you, Stat Guy? Any holes in the defense, or are you on that same sentiment?
So, I mean, I guess the one hole that I found in doing my research was maybe the depth of the interior line. But I was thinking to myself, we talk all the time about how a good front seven can make a poor secondary great. And now you have a great secondary with great defensive ends. And I really don't think me and you might be able to go out there and play defensive tackle for them and rack up some sacks or some tackles. Like that secondary is locked down. I really wish they had how they have the best offensive line. I wish I had an award like that for all the different position groups because I'd put this secondary up head to head against anybody in the country.
Yeah, man. I mean, with Kalen King out there, I mean, you do lose Joey Porter Jr., but like y'all mentioned, there's a lot of guys to fill in those shoes. And one thing you can't have too much of is depth. And it looks like Penn State has that, in spades, especially in that secondary, man. I mean, I think you guys have covered it great. And to go along with that offense, I mean, listen, man, the stars are starting to align for Penn State, man. And so we got to get into the 2023 outlook. I mean, just overall, what's your feelings going into the season?
I haven't been this excited for Penn State football in a very long time. Now, 2016 was a blip on the radar because we just rode the lightning and won 9 straight games. Yep. And then the year after that, we had a lot of expectations that we did not live up to, mainly because we had a generational talent with Saquon Barkley. I mean, that's fine. This year, if you want to talk about ceilings and floors, I think our floor is 10 wins. I don't see anyone outside of Michigan or Ohio State beating us, and I think we beat one of them this year, which leads us to 11-1, if not 12-0, and I believe that is good enough for the playoffs. So I think really a Rose Bowl is our New York Six Bowl win would be our floor, and our ceiling is going into the playoff.
Okay, I definitely agree with that floor 10-2. I think anything other than 10-2, I'm not saying that the wheels fell off, but you definitely want to say what went wrong. Where was the key injury? Where was whatever went wrong? What play went wrong? Because again, you're better than you were last year, on paper. And last year you only lost 2. I think it should be the same way this way. And I do think that you guys, looking at the key games, Michigan and Ohio State, of course, every year, those are the key games. I think more so for me, period, it's going to be at Ohio State because you're on the road at Ohio State. And again, you did play them tougher than you played Michigan overall last year. Stat guy, any key games you're looking for this year with this Penn State team that looks like they're ready to make that move into fighting for a playoff spot?
Yeah, so obviously knowing that you were gonna go with Ohio State, Michigan, I tried to look in and find, is there anything else that could maybe be a roadblock or kind of scary matchup wise? And back-to-back weeks they play. It's 2 home games, which is nice, but they play Illinois September the 16th. Back in 21, got beat by Illinois at home. Brett Bielema is there. They're going to play defense, and he's going to run the ball or try to run the ball down your throat for 4 quarters, smash mouth football. And so that game could just get a little funky. It's probably going to be lower scoring, and the game's going to be shorter, even more so now with the clock still running after first downs. And so to follow that up, they play it with probably the next most physical team in the Big Ten. They get Iowa to come to town. And so those 2 games back to back, they've lost their last 2 meetings against Iowa. Iowa's offense is atrocious. And I know it's a meme, but they play defense. And so so for me, man, I'm just like, those are the 2 games that are like red flags on their schedule outside of the big 2 that something could go wrong. And these are one that they could get tripped up in.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to look hard because, like I say, with this talent, it's hard to go outside of Michigan, Ohio State. I just nitpicking. It was a close win against Northwestern last year, and you do go to Northwestern. Not that I think Northwestern can beat Penn State. I'm just again. We're trying to find anything we can.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Northwestern's got a whole lot of other things that's well beyond the field, and I agree.
Exactly.
Iowa's tough. We got a night whiteout. That's our whiteout game for Iowa. So there's that. I mean, ideally, we go to Ohio State, we take business, and we're both 9-0 for Michigan. 9-0, 9-0 at home. That'd be fun.
Yeah, I know, right? So can James Franklin get over the hump, or is he Mark Richt in the Big Ten?
If he can't get over the hump this year, then yeah, he might be Mark Richt.
Not that I mean, as a dog fan, I love Mark Richt.
No, that's fine. I mean, my God, Mark Richt was the pillar of consistency.
Exactly.
But he always liked the but. And, Penn State has had all these things. We've won Fiesta Bowls, Rose Bowls, and Big Ten championships. That's great. But, I think now a lot of people are just measured by, do you go to the playoff or not? Now, everything changes next year. Big Ten gets rid of divisions. We get USC, UCLA. And then it's 12, 16 teams in the playoffs. So that's a totally different ballgame. It would be cool that if for the final measure and the final measuring mark of only 4 teams in the playoffs, that you can make that stamp before all these changes. And that can kind of change the trajectory of your group, where now you're in the battle for 5 stars and high 4 stars, as opposed to, oh my gosh, we're in a dogfight with Illinois for a 4-star offensive tackle. It can change it. And then also a new NIL money. And we have upgrades to our facilities, and we're going to get more transfers. If you can keep on this trajectory moving up, which it has been since we won the Rose Bowl, let's keep it going and try to change some hearts and minds.
That's right, man. And I mean, if you guys can get to the playoffs, like you say, next year it changes, which opens up. I truly believe, if it's a 12-team playoff, I think the Big Ten and the SEC are getting 6 of those spots, regardless of how you want to break them down, which means there's more chance you get there. You bring back both running backs because they're nothing but sophomores. Drew Holler's back. So this could be the start of something for Penn State in the Big Ten. You never know. And it'd be great time to prove it. Ohio State's breaking in a new quarterback as well. I mean, we've heard a lot of the recruit rankings and all of that, but we haven't seen it actually on the field. And then Michigan, on the other hand, loses a lot after this year. So if you can beat either of those or both and just do it, listen, man, just why not? Just go 12-0, leave no doubt, and then get into the playoffs. So
I'd be a very happy man if that happens.
So, hey, Penn State fans, look, we will be following along with Penn State this year, doing some games. We're going to try to have a man back on. He has a lot of knowledge about Penn State. We're going to do at least, 4 to 6 games, especially the Michigan and Ohio State games. And we want to see maybe this is the year that Penn State does it and James Franklin does get over the hump. All right, man. Stat guy, you got any parting thoughts, man?
Yeah, I mean, I just had a question for our guests. Is there a rhyme or reason to the whiteout game, like what game it is, or is it just a random game every year? Because we've always tried to pinpoint, being from the South, we try to guess what game it's going to be, and we're never right.
Yeah, I think for most recently, it's been because of Big Noon Kickoff and Fox having exclusive rights, and now ESPN covering SEC. For the longest time, it was either Michigan or Ohio State. But then obviously we had an Auburn, there's an Iowa, there's Minnesota was last year. So rhyme or reason, absolutely not. That just leads me to believe that the Ohio State game will probably be a Big Noon kick, and they're going to wait and see where Michigan and Penn State are for that late November. That might be the ESPN game. But I think also you have to think that it's a very cold place, and you can only have one night game, I think, in the month of November offward. So got to get it off early. And so I guess week 4 it is.
Man, I know we talked about it in the Penn State Utah preview, man, but we despise Big Noon kickoffs here in the South.
Hate it like poison. Hate it like poison.
Like nothing more we hate than see Penn State, Ohio State at 12 noon. That should definitely. I know y'all got the can't play the night games. But at least give it to us at 3:30. It's like, man, perfect. Come on, man.
Or no, if that's how they feel, just build everybody up there a dome. Just build everybody a dome. Let's
exactly.
Tonight. They've been doing kickoffs, bro. But at least it stretches the day out. You get a great game to start your day off with. But that's a primetime game that everybody in the country should be tuned into at 7:30.
Big time, man. So we definitely appreciate you stopping by. Tell the people how they can find you again.
Hit me up on Twitter, Sidelines Penn State or SSN_PSU. You can find me either way, and I will be doing a little bit more research and articles and more tweeting activity as the season's about to come up to us in about a month or 2.
That's right, man. Hey, man, for we want to thank our guests coming in, giving us this knowledge, talking Penn State with us. Like I say, we'll be following along. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And for the Stat Guy, I'm Coach I. This is the Fan Addict on the Fan Addict Sports Network. We out.
Peace. We got it jumping like it's that valley. I call my dogs out the pound, let's go eat. Turn on the Fan Addict, let's have a debate. Who really hold down the Southeast from state to state? What team hungry gonna eat everything up off they plate?